Hello, my name is Julia Streets and welcome to DiverCity Podcast, talking about equality, inclusion and diversity in financial services. As regular listeners will know, on occasion we record episodes from leading industry conferences around the world. And today's episode is recorded live on stage on the 20th of November 2019 before a capacity audience at the Women in Payments Symposium in Sydney. On the podcast, we seek to shine a light on positive progress, call out areas requiring further focus, and offer lots of ideas to help drive change. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Jackie Kallman, Deanne Keetelaar, and Felicity Blake. So Jackie Kallman is the head of payments industry at ANZ. Following a 10-year tenure at ANZ, her work has been extensive across product development, innovation, and the industry as a whole. She has managed a wide range of payment product portfolios, and she plays a key role in ANZ's strategy, standards, and industry positioning. And to top it off, Jackie is also a member of the Women in Payments Advisory Board in Australia. Deanne Keetelaar is the General Manager for Payments and Financial Services at Australia Post, where she was responsible for products and innovation for a wide range of constituents, including consumers, businesses, and government customers. Her career journey has included serving as a general manager of payments at NAB, where her portfolio included domestic and international payments and the new payments platform. And Felicity Blake is responsible for ACI's New Zealand clients portfolio with more than 20 years of experience in the payments industry based in Auckland, New Zealand. Her key focus is at developing relationships to build strategic partnerships. And it is no surprise, therefore, that she is an active member of Payments New Zealand, bringing her global experience and expertise to the local conversation on payments innovation. Jackie, Deanne, and Felicity, welcome to the show. Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me here on stage at the symposium, which is very exciting. So obviously on the series, we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion in general. And today we're particularly keen to explore the conversation about recruitment. But before we do that, I want to just give you each a moment to talk about your own diversity and inclusion initiatives and particularly the impact that they're having. So Felicity, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. ACI Worldwide is, as the name would suggest, a global company. And I guess if we think about diversity and inclusion, we have that inherently built into the need that we have in doing business in 37 countries. So we've got about 4,500 people working at ACI, and they're in different markets which have different cultures, and that is a huge area of focus for us, making sure that we are catering for that diversity. Not only are we catering for them where they live and work, but of course they move around, and we have our technical consultants and our executive, various people moving to other markets, so they have to be aware of other cultures. So that is a very strong area where I think that we demonstrate and really walk the talk around diversity. In terms of gender, we have our own women's network we've had it for the last 6 years. I'm the international co-chair, so that's another layer of diversity within the women's network, is that we are a US-based company and we need to have representation out of US so that we're not so US-centric in everything that we think about. We also are very aware that we need to be helping the pipeline for growth in women in payments, and to support that initiative, we have some Coding for Girls workshops that we are doing. We've done them in 8 markets so far, and the concept is that we will use that as a footprint which we can then take out to other markets.
Because inspiring young makes a huge difference.
Exactly,
yeah,
building that interest.
Jackie, let me bring you in here then. So to talk to us about your initiatives and what you're doing at the moment.
Yes, so it's actually a really big focus for ANZ, diversity and inclusion. And I think we're focused on diversity, but also the inclusion side. And we are proud to say that our diverse groups in our surveys, our diverse groups are as engaged as our general population, which is great because that's a testament to both diversity and inclusion. And in our engagement survey, recent engagement survey, 94% of employees think the organization is accepting of individual differences. So for us, those are really good measures of inclusion. In terms of diversity and actually creating that opportunity for differences, we have a number of initiatives that we are proud sponsors of, and I thought I'd just talk to a couple of those. Mm-hmm. Yes, so we have a program called Given the Chance, which we've partnered with the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence with refugees, helping refugees and giving refugees an opportunity for a 6-month work placement, which I think is fantastic. And I think when we're talking about diversity here, it's not just about gender diversity. We are talking about refugees, we're talking about the Indigenous community, and we have work placement, full-time traineeship, school-based traineeship, so a lot of focus on Indigenous population. We've partnered with the Sydney Mardi Gras for grants for non-for-profit organizations. We are part of the Australian Network on Disability Access and Inclusion Index and have been noted as a role model there. Our D&I function within ANZ is actually relatively small in people, and the impact that we have comes from our network groups around the organization. And so that's part of how we maintain the engagement, is actually getting people within the businesses involved in the conversation and really having those networks drive the conversations, not just coming from the D&I specialists. So
because that's the risk, because it becomes a preserve of the few rather than engagement of the many. So
correct.
Absolutely.
So we're really proud of those networks, and it's been really effective.
Well, thank you for that. And Deanne, talk to us about what you're doing at Australia Post.
For sure. I mean, as you can appreciate, diversity and inclusion is incredibly important to Australia Post. So for those that aren't aware, we are a postal network. We also run a large logistics company focused on, obviously, e-commerce and getting parcels to us all, because, of course, we're all busily online shopping. We have 4,000 points of presence across Australia, or more than 4,000 points of presence across Australia, so that's a really large network. And we offer a diverse and a wide range of products and services to our customer base. So essentially every Australian is a customer of Australia Post, if you think about it that way. And so from a workforce perspective, it's incredibly important that our workforce represents our customer base. So that's why diversity and inclusion is incredibly important to us and been a big focus. And of course, like many organisations, we have had our challenges in that space. And again, if you think about the fact that a large percentage of our business is a logistics company, that is in particular traditionally a male-dominated workforce, and also quite challenging in terms of other inclusion and in terms of other diverse groups, including people with disabilities. So our diversity and inclusion focus has been on a number of areas. One is obviously ensuring that we have the right gender balance across the organisation. I'm pleased to say that we've made some really great inroads in that space. We still do have some work to go in those areas that are traditionally male-dominated, but we have a clear action plan around how we will address that, including establishment of targets and different programs to assist in ensuring that we are recruiting females into those roles. But also other diverse groups, as I mentioned as well. We have partnerships and programs with community organisations to ensure that we're also placing people with disability into particular roles. We've got a couple of trials happening at the moment, both in our network and our frontline, as well as in our corporate office as well, and ensuring that we are recruiting people with disabilities and providing them the support that they need. Obviously, LGBTI has been a major focus for us, like most organisations as well. And we also spend quite a lot of time actually surveying our staff and understanding where we can do better, how people feel about us being an inclusive workforce, and then taking the necessary actions and steps to address that.
Because the feeling part really matters, because we talk a lot about the roadmap to better diversity, if you want to call it that, and inclusion. But there's a risk that we end up with this in quotas and numbers, but actually the human being that presents every day at work has to feel that they are included and recognised in that. But it's interesting you're talking about the roadmap, and clearly a really key part of that is the recruitment process. And the reason why we want to talk about recruitment particularly today is because organisations are striving very hard to change, and the recruitment industry has a role to play in that. So, and I appreciate that not all of you recruit directly as such, but you're all leaders in your field, so must be thinking about this in regards to talent and the inclusion conversation. So Jackie, let me come to you first of all, and what sort of changes have you seen when it comes to recruitment?
Well, so ANZ recently underwent a major restructure and change and moved towards scaled agile called New Ways of Working. And as part of that, we introduced personality and behavioral testing as part of our job placement. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really interesting because while we're not looking at individuals and going all the strengths, weaknesses, we don't want those people. What we're looking at is the mix of skill sets, mix of personalities that we need to build a really good and effective team, placing people in the right roles and having those differences and inclusion. And I think that's a really good initiative that we've done. We also have multidisciplinary teams now and squads who are involved in the recruitment process. So you're not just talking about, a single manager making a decision. And so, you have that diversity of thinking. And another thing that I think is really important is how we lead in the culture from the top around who we select. And we have a program called New Ways of Leading, and it focuses on attributes like, or concepts like connecting with empathy, empowering our people, and we look to bring in leaders that do these fundamental things that, again, it's about accepting the individual, working with the individual within the organization and creating teams that are diverse and really thrive.
Mm-hmm. And Deanne, let me bring you in here as well, because as you're thinking sort of about the changing mix, and very interesting, Jackie's point about the engagement of the many, and also kind of the squads being part of that recruitment process. But at the other end of the tree, if you like, or higher up the tree, are you finding that the same sort of talent is being presented by your recruitment partners? And are you seeing that shift at all as people are becoming more aware of the value of diversity?
Yeah, and I think Australia Post is certainly taking steps as part of the Diversity Inclusion Action Plan that I mentioned earlier to ensure that as we are thinking about recruitment, as we're going out and we're sourcing candidates, that we're putting the right frameworks and processes in place to ensure that we have a diverse pool of candidates for us to review and to select. I think also, and to pick up on Jackie's point, there is an increased awareness from a leadership perspective around the importance of ensuring that we do have a diverse range of candidates for us to review and to choose from, and to ensure that we have diversity in our workforce, so that when we're selecting people, there is an expectation on us as leaders to ensure that we're selecting people to create a diverse workforce, and we're not just selecting the same people time and time again.
And I think one of the questions that sort of comes from that is, as leaders, current sort of top of the career leaders and also aspiring leaders in this room, is, what advice would we give to hiring managers in your position who are thinking about how to recruit and how to bring greater diversity as well? And any tips, any advice you'd give the room?
Yeah, so we recognise as a technology company that diversity is absolutely an essential element for sparking innovation. And we're working with our customers who we talk about as partners, because that's important to us. They are also doing the same. And it is incredible how much it matters to them. I heard on an earlier panel about making purposeful decisions from a consumer perspective. It can equally be said from a corporate or a business perspective. So when we think about beyond that entry-level diversity thinking about, getting a lot of different people contributing, our recruitment processes have changed to a more values-based one. So yes, you need to have the skills and the experience, depending on what level you're entering into the organisation. But the really big success factor is, do your values, your core values, align with ACI's core values. And we have our values. We have a strategy day every year where we talk about our values. They're very, very important, core to the business. And respect is one of those. And we need to have that respect. It is absolutely key to understanding and appreciating the individuality that diversity brings.
And I think part of that is that when you're hiring, it's quite easy to hire from paper. But when it comes to the respect and the values piece, is about interviewing in a slightly different way and being very sort of open as leaders to where those individuals fit within the organisation in order to kind of, you're nodding, Jackie. So other thoughts from a leadership perspective about what leaders should be doing to play a part in all of that change?
I think it's hiring outside your comfort zone too. I mean, it's really easy to sort of hire people that are like-minded, that are similar to you, that it's a safe space. And I think it's about going, well, what do we actually need? What's the set of skills that we need, the set of ways of thinking that we need? And it might be something that you're not necessarily comfortable with, but it stretches you as a leader, and what you're doing is actually bringing together a team that will be better for that. And Scott Page, who does a lot of research in this area, talks about a diversity bonus and the fact that once you really achieve that cognitive diversity, which comes in part from identity diversity, that you actually have greater performance as a team and for your business.
And Deanne, you're nodding along with that. I mean, your thoughts on the topic as well.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a world of information out there now and evidence to support the impact of having diverse leadership teams, whether it's diversity on boards, and we're not just talking gender diversity here, right? We're talking diversity more generally. So whether it be race, age, sexuality, to bring that diversity of thought to the table, which in turn delivers better business outcomes. And I think all of us as leaders should be thinking about that all of the time. And I can't agree more with Jackie. It does require us as individual leaders to step outside of our comfort zone and think differently and think outside of the square about the people that we're interviewing. What are their backgrounds? We don't necessarily need to hire people that have 15 or 20 years of experience. When we can bring in somebody who's got the right energy, enthusiasm, or perhaps a different set of experiences that might bring in a fresh set of thinking. And just because they don't have experience or skills in one particular area doesn't mean those things can't be taught.
And thinking then about younger talents coming to the organisation, particularly into the world of payments or indeed any organisation, there are sort of two parts of that. One of them is how organisations appeal to young talent that doesn't have that experience that you're talking about, young talent that comes into an organisation going, actually, does this feel like the right fit, and actually, do I want to stick it out through those hierarchies? And then also about how young talent presents itself to the organisation, times when we need data scientists and we need skills in certain areas as well. Felicity, let me bring you in first of all with your thoughts around so where does leadership and young talent sort of combine, and what we should be thinking about particularly to appeal to young talent. And I deliberately use the word young talent because I'm not thinking graduates necessarily, because also part of the diversity is finding young talent from many pools as well.
Yeah, well, I think it's important for us all to be talking to young women, whether it's in a formalised program like our Coding for Girls initiative, or whether it's just talking to your kids and your kids' friends, or, they don't have to be your kids, they're just the children in your life, about what opportunities there are. I don't know, when I was going through school, I knew about a certain number of career roles. The options have certainly increased, but even then there wasn't a lot of talk about the deeply technical roles. Or I work for a tech company, but I'm not a technical person. So there are roles within organisations which don't have to conform to what you think it will do. So it's helping the young people understand what their options. So that's the beginning of the pipe. And then once they're in, it really is providing that encouragement, that mentorship. We were talking at the table earlier about the need to really reinforce reinforce that confidence in people. I think that women are sadly less confident in our own selves and promoting our own selves against the men. And so we need to be each other's cheerleaders, provide that guidance and that real confidence boost.
And Jackie, would you agree with that? Do you think it comes down to starting young? How young should we start to encourage that young talent into the organisation?
Yeah, that's right. And as you say, it's not just going to graduate programs and graduates. We have a program with refugees. I mentioned Indigenous Australians previously. We have a Spectrum program that targets people with autism coming into the workplace and the roles and giving additional support as they transition into the workplace. So I think, it's about looking at our population, and again, diversity of skills and diversity of background means that you don't just go to one source for that entry level. And I think historically, maybe in Australia, we've done that a bit, but I think that's changing.
And Deanne, in terms of talking to listeners who are young talent and they're thinking about coming to the world of financial services, or indeed payments more specifically, is any advice you'd give to those listening about how to present themselves to a corporate organisation to appeal?
So I'm a big believer that product management more generally, but certainly payments and the financial services space is a really fantastic career development opportunity for lots of different people, and not necessarily because they want to come in and all of a sudden create a career as a product manager and be in that career for forever and a day, but an opportunity to come into this type of environment to learn skills that they may might not actually have the opportunity to learn elsewhere. Including people who are quite entrepreneurial and looking for building their commercial skills, for example, and building their strategic skills, their strategic development or strategic management skills as well. So I would encourage young people who are thinking about roles in payments and financial services to really consider that and give that a lot of thought. In terms of how to present themselves, I think just have the confidence, as Felicity sort of said before, in what they actually do bring to the role. And look, don't get me wrong, there will definitely be roles, and financial services is such a broad industry, so it's very hard, but there are obviously definitely skills that people may need, or training that people might need in order to step into particular roles, but have the confidence to be able to put yourself forward. At the end of the day, when I think about ensuring that we have the right pipeline of talent in my business, I think about the fact that, and I come back to the point I made before about making sure that our workforce is representative of our customer base. And we talk about the rise of the millennials. And at the end of the day, as we know, millennials think very differently to the way that the baby boomers think or some of our traditional customers think. And we need to make sure that we have people in our organisation that think differently to the way we do, and can bring that sort of fresh thinking and fresh set of eyes. And so my last bit of advice would be just have the willingness to learn. Come in with an open mindset, bring that energy and enthusiasm that we love, but also come with a willingness to work hard and to have that willingness to learn.
So I'm going to stay with you on this one, because we're going to the last section, which is something that I've been thinking about quite a lot, which is, as I don't want to be the doomsayer that says we're going into an economic downturn. However, depending on what you read, I think that might bear out to be true. So I worry quite a lot that actually it's very easy to keep D&I on the agenda when you're growing. But at a time of economic downturn, when organisations will have to be reorganising or retrenching in some way, it's really important that we don't lose this conversation. So just picking up on your point, I mean, one of the compelling reasons to keep it on is being reflective of your customers as well. Really keen to hear your thoughts as we go into the last, concluding minutes of why D&I should stay on the agenda. So Deanne, let's come to you first of all.
I think, just as I've already said, it's important that any organisation, regardless of the economic environment, needs to stay relevant to its customer base and continue to reinvent itself and continue to thinking about how it develops its products and services to remain relevant. And if your workforce isn't representative of your customer base, you're very quickly become irrelevant. So my view is that even in an environment of economic downturn, when people are cutting budgets and things like that, if an organisation is taking the steps to integrate D&I into its DNA and become part of the culture and just the way we do things around here, then there shouldn't be any reason why we stop thinking about diversity and inclusion as an important, as an integrable part of the way we do business.
Great. Felicity, what are your thoughts on the topic? What would you add to that?
I actually think it's more important when times are tougher. I'm from one of the smallest markets in the global economy, and we have to think innovatively about how to solve for any issue with less funding than larger markets. Mm-hmm. And so diversity is really important, as I've said, to spark that creative thinking. So you can't all have all of the same people in the room and get a different outcome to the last time you all met. You have to have people challenging that status quo and thinking about how could we do this differently to get a different outcome. And so I really do believe that it's core to creating that innovation, and therefore even more important when economic times are tough.
And Jackie, you're nodding along with this. You're very compliant, kind of very admiring. But actually, what I really enjoy is not only the energy in the room, because I can tell that there's an enormous amount of attention in everything that you're saying, but also the fact that actually you're building on each other's comments, which is wonderful. So for final comments, I'm going to come to you, Jackie.
So there's not a whole lot left because I completely agree with everything that's been said. I think sometimes when times are tougher, it's easier to fall back into that comfort zone. And so I think it's even more important that we, as you say, we build a workforce that represents the population. We work towards that diversity bonus because it's even more important now than when we're growing and we're thriving as an economy. And it's critical.
It is critical. What are the compelling words with which to end the conversation. I have to say it's been a fantastic conversation. And if you think about in this relatively short period of time how much we've covered, and we've talked about organisational structures, leadership, culture, recruitment, retention, and also leadership as well. And thank you all so much for your thoughts. And the only way really to wrap this up is to turn to the audience at this amazing conference at the Women in Payments Symposium in Sydney to please thank the panel today. Thank you very much indeed.
This episode of DiverCity Podcast was produced by me, Kieran Yates, on behalf of Julia Streets Productions. You can find out more about the guests on this week's show on our website, DiverCityPodcast.com, and that's diversity with a C, not an S. Whilst you're there, you can also sign up to our newsletter for all our latest updates. To be sure of catching all our future podcasts, subscribe to our feed in iTunes or your favourite podcast app. And if you've enjoyed this episode of DiverCity Podcast, remember to give us a rating or review. It all helps promote the show to a wider audience. Finally, our Twitter handle is @DiverCityPod. Thanks for listening.